Hey everyone, welcome to the Passwordless POV LastPass LinkedIn Live series. I'm technology correspondent Lisa Martin. Happy to be here talking with you guys about LastPass Labs AI and threats. Two of our rock stars are back. Please welcome back Alex Cox, Director of Information Security at LastPass, and Mike Kosak is here as well, Senior Principal Intelligence Analyst at LastPass. We're going to be walking through four things today in the next 15 to 20 minutes. Alex is going to walk us through the potential uses of AI in cybersecurity defense. Going to kind of talk about three main things under that. Then we're going to bring Mike in to talk about AI-driven password cracking. What is that? Why is it happening? How can you be prepared and ready to defend? Alex then comes back to talk about AI use by attackers. Yes, we all know it's happening. What's going on there? And then both Alex and Mike come back to talk about novel AI attack scenarios, what they're seeing there, what the future state of AI in cybersecurity looks like. Alex, welcome. Let's go ahead and start with you. I read an interesting blog post that you authored recently where you said, and I quote, "The new age of AI is upon us. It's disruptive and it's moving extremely quickly into everyday life." Expand on that where cyber defense is concerned, Alex, especially as AI can be a tool for malicious cyber activities, which creates this really complex, ever-changing cyber landscape.
Sure. So, when you think about artificial intelligence and machine learning and, that type of technology, it's actually been in the security space for some time, as far as the machine learning side goes. Requires a fairly significant amount of technical knowledge to use. And, you've seen a lot of security products that have, some machine learning in the background. Um, One of the things that's really made a huge change in the AI landscape recently is this idea of large language models and generative AI. And the main difference there is that it has allowed a lot of people to use and get into working with AI from a security standpoint, at a level that's much easier to deal with than typically we've seen in the past. You don't really need a huge amount of technical knowledge to talk to Chat GPT, and it can help you kind of solve problems in that way. So we're seeing a lot wider deployment and understanding of the use of AI in security. So it's a pretty exciting time.
It definitely is. From what I understand, there are three potential applications of AI and ML in cyber defense. Alex, walk us through what those three are and the impact that they can make.
Sure. So the first one is what I'd say is anomaly detection. And if you've probably heard people say that the human mind is the best pattern recognition computer on the planet, and that's absolutely true, right? The problem is we work at human speed, right? We don't work at machine speed. So taking an extremely large data set and putting it in front of an analyst, it can be challenging to pick things out. You've got to, again, have some technical background. You've got to have the ability to figure out what's important in that large data set. The advantage of of using generative AI or large language model for this type of work is that you can feed it a large data set of various types, and you can ask it plain language questions. Hey, what's the most popular thing in here? What is unusual about this data set? Show me the outliers. And all of those things make that idea of being able to do anomaly detection that much more powerful. When I combine that with doing things like scripting and being able to automate it, I can then take some of that pattern recognition capability at machine speed, and that just makes it that much better and that much easier for us to work. So it's a force multiplier when it comes to finding these anomalous behaviors. Um, the next one is what we'd call predictive analysis, and that's more kind of thinking pie in the sky kind of stuff. So I could say, hey, Chat GPT, what do we need to look out for in 2024 from a security standpoint? And given the right prompts and enough access to information, it can fairly confidently say, these based on the things we've seen in the past X amount of time, here is where we think the threat environment is going. So being able to predict that sort of thing, or understand where there are connections that you might have missed, is again one of the more powerful parts of this technology. The third one, and it's really an application of the technology, is around summarization, especially in regards to threat intelligence. So if you look at the threat intel world and the work that your typical analyst does, there's a lot of reading, there's a lot of note taking, there's a lot of summary. And I always jokingly say threat intelligence, at its root, is tell me everything about something you just learned about as quickly as possible. that's challenging, especially if you're working for a big company or you've got, active incident or what have you. The advantage of using these large language models to do this is it allows you to summarize things in a way that's very quick, um, you know, relatively accurate, and usable in a way that doesn't require you to have a whole lot of analyst training. Now, I will say in this particular case, you do have to do some babysitting because there still is some issue with hallucinations and these models creating some facts that aren't actually facts. So if you do the kind of summarization work, um, you have to kind of do some checking, but it's again a force multiplier, right? The analyst time that's required to do that, to do some fact checking on the AI results is much less than it takes to do the research and pull the stuff out and summarize kind of in general. So it's again, it's a big force multiplier. And I think as the technology improves and we see more development in the background and inclusion of this type of technology, we'll see just it get better and better. So those are really the three things: the anomaly detection piece, the predictive analysis, and then summarization or a similar application.
Excellent. And I understand that the recent boom in LLMs, you talked about that generative AI having a big boom in the last year. Summarization seems to be increasingly important. Is that correct? And if so, why?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, 'cause if you think about the amount of information that is, thrown at us day to day, it can be really challenging to keep up with things. So, just the a very simple use case for summarization is, hey, show me today's news articles. What do I need to know about today? There's another really interesting use that I saw is the Pareto principle, which basically says if you're trying to learn about a subject, there's 20% of that subject that will give you 80% of the knowledge you need to work in that subject area. So I can go to ChatGPT or one of these LLMs and say, based on the Pareto principle, show me everything I need to know about Python. And it'll say, here's the 20% of Python you need to learn to be able to do 80% of the work. So, when it comes to learning and being very valuable from that skill acquisition standpoint, or understanding where you need to focus your attention. These things are super powerful. So yeah, it's a really neat time.
Excellent. Alex, thank you so much for I'm going to use a pun, summarization of AI in cyber defense. That was fantastic. Mike, let's bring you into the show now and talk about AI-driven password cracking. We know that AI is going to shape the future of information security in a lot of ways, but what does AI mean to password security right now in 2023, almost 2024?
Sure, that's a great question, Lisa. So really, what it comes down to is there's really a marginal change in sort of the threat environment to passwords as we look at AI and its applications. A lot of that really is driven around what Alex mentioned, as far as the ease of access, making it easier for people to use the password cracking tools that are out there. There are some sort of AI-focused password cracking tools, but they really don't, they perform at best sort of marginally better than the existing models that are out there. So, what we see is that using AI to access the existing models, either the more AI driven or the sort of classic models out there, that's really where we see the difference. More people can crack passwords, but the ability to crack passwords hasn't fundamentally changed. It's not like, when we talk about quantum computing and the implications for encryption and password cracking there, there's an immediate change with that on day one. That's why people are always so concerned about it. We don't see that with AI right now. Really, the limiting factor still oftentimes is the hardware, the computing power, and AI hasn't done anything to change that.
So with AI-driven password cracking and some of the kind of current state that you mentioned, do organizations need to be worried right now?
No, as long as they have secure passwords, the same sort of mathematical protections apply. As I mentioned, actually, Dan Gooden at Ars Technica wrote a fantastic article that really does a good job of sort of breaking down the hype from the reality when we look at these AI-driven password cracking capabilities versus the existing password cracking capabilities. As I said, it's the term I keep going back to because I really think it's important to think about it this way: is that it's a marginal difference. As long as you have good passwords, you're not reusing passwords, you're using complex passwords with upper lowercase letters, symbols, the whole nine yards, then you're in good shape.
And you wrote a blog recently, and I love the title. It said, "Don't panic." And I added, "At the disco." Haha. A good password is still smarter than AI. So, Mike, what would be the steps that you advise our audience to take to protect themselves now and in the future? Because you mentioned that AI-driven password cracking isn't new, but the technology hasn't dramatically changed. So, what's your recommendation and advice for folks to just really be dialing up their cyber posture?
Sure. So, the first thing I would say is follow the NIST standards. I'd be remiss if I didn't call out, like, use LastPass. That's where we can help with this. Because what you tend to see, and a lot of the sort of ink that you see spilled around AI and its implication on passwords, is its ability to crack passwords that are simple or that have been reused very quickly. Again, going back to the fact that that's the same with non-AI driven password cracking tools. So the best thing that you can do is, use unique passwords, complex passwords. Now is the time to start thinking about that shift to passkeys as well, which takes password cracking out of the equation entirely. So one, using better passwords, and two, starting to really think about what's next and prepare yourself for that next step in technology.
And take us out of this topic, Mike, with talking about LastPass's capabilities, how it's going to really enable users to quickly and easily create passwords that would be much safer for the current landscape that will just continue to evolve.
Sure, absolutely. So, if we think about password cracking and AI's capabilities in password cracking, and you look at some of the tables that are out there as far as how long it takes to crack passwords based on length, based on complexity, based on human bias, and that aspect of it, the best thing that you can do is remove human bias to the greatest degree possible. So, truly randomize your password as best you can, make it as long as possible, and make it as complex as possible. And LastPass makes it really easy to do that. You can drag a bar and choose up to 64 characters in your password. You can choose, what kind of symbols you want included, since obviously some sites have different requirements or won't take special characters. It makes it really easy to go ahead and select for that and create as complex a password as possible for that particular site. Which puts you, anytime you look at those password cracking tables, if you can get sort of in the aliens, for lack of a better way to put it, you're doing pretty well, and it makes it really easy to do that.
And that's the key there, is ease, that you just talked about a number of times. Alex, bringing you back into the conversation, we've talked about, you talked about leveraging AI for anomaly detection, predictive analytics, summarization. Mike talked about AI-driven password cracking, why we really shouldn't be worried, and some of the great things that can be done now easily. But let's talk about what we know is going on, and that's AI use by attackers. We know it's in their hands. Historically, phishing has been really easy to spot, but now with AI-powered phishing attacks, there's changes. Talk to us about that, like the AI innovation that the attackers have. What should we be aware of that's going on?
Yeah, for sure. So what's interesting about cyber criminals in general is that they're opportunistic and entrepreneurial. So when a new technology comes out and they're able to kind of look at it and go, hey, this can help me do my job of cybercrime or what have you. Phishing is a great example of that. The like you said previously, English language hasn't been a first language of these attackers, and the ability to kind of, for an average English speaker, native English speaker, to look and go, this doesn't sound right, something's funky here, and able to go, hey, yeah, this is a phishing email, is getting a lot harder, because the generative AI is very capable of sounding like a person, of interacting like a person. So when I say write me a phishing email for LastPass, I'm going to get something that's pretty recognizable as from a native English speaker. Again, makes things fairly difficult. That's one part of it. The second part is this idea of deep fakes, right? So I've talked largely about the chat aspect of generative AI, but there is a video and photo aspect as well, where you can prompt a generative AI system to say, create a picture of so and so doing so and so, and it'll create a pretty accurate picture. If you guys remember, I don't know, 6 months ago, a year ago, there was a picture of the Pope in a big puffy white jacket that went around, and a lot of people were like, "Dang, the Pope's got some drip." But what it actually turned out to be was, it was an AI generated picture that looked almost
Yeah.
indistinguishable from something that was real. So I think that opened a lot of people's eyes to, the capabilities when it comes to creating these fake images that can, portray things in, a negative fashion or, what have you.
Yeah.
The second part of that is video, right? So the video capabilities right now are nascent, but you're eventually going to be able to say, create a video of the CEO of Microsoft driving a Porsche 911, and it'll do that, right? So we're getting to the point where there's going to be a lot of work around deep fake detection and understanding, is this AI created or not? And it's one of those really live, active fields right now, trying to figure out this AI detection piece. So really interesting bad guy use case. The other thing I talk about is malware. So this idea of polymorphic malware, where I'm historically, a lot of anti-malware systems have worked on signatures and heuristics and that sort of thing, and that looks for things that we know are malicious or things that we know we've seen before that are malware. The ability for AI to create, to help create malware that isn't the same every single time, that's always a little bit different, to kind of fool some of those systems, is another capability that we're thinking about. The good thing is that a lot of the commercially available, publicly available generative AI systems have guardrails that don't allow you to do that. So if you try to do something that's very overtly hacking related or security related, it won't let you. Now, the downside is that there's also a whole bunch of people that are figuring out how to jailbreak these things. So they know if they ask in a certain way or use certain character sets or put spaces between all of the letters, sometimes you can fool these systems into doing what you want them to. So it's kind of a multi-tiered approach to using AI in a negative fashion that, a lot of people are working on. So again, really interesting time to look at AI.
Very interesting times. You talked about deep fakes, the AI innovation that's going on, but also some of the guardrails that are extant in generative AI and LLMs. Love now to bring you both back in to talk about with the audience some of those novel AI attack scenarios that we really need to be aware of, because we know, and you both talked about this, AI technology continues to evolve, but also you mentioned polymorphic malware, Alex, new types of attacks. Can you expand, Alex, on some of those new types of attacks, and what are some of the examples of threats that we need to be aware of?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things that I've been thinking about, and I've actually played with it a little bit, is generative AI has shown a real strength in helping somebody do coding, right? If you're not a software engineer, you're not a developer, the ability for you to create programs that do things that you need them to do or solve problems with code is a lot easier, because you can say, hey, write me a Python script that does X, and it will write you something that's pretty close to good. And usually if you tool with it a little bit, you can get it working. The other side of that is when you think about the way that bad guys develop vulnerabilities and exploits, many times what they do is they, poke at a system until they figure out that it's going to do something weird. And then they, develop code that exploits those vulnerabilities. One of the ways they do that is they look at when patches are released, and they analyze the patches, and they say, what has this patch changed? And then they go look at what it changed, and typically you can kind of ferret out a vulnerability or an exploit there. So enter generative AI. What if I feed some code to generative AI and say, show me where the security holes are here? Now you can do that in two ways, right? You can do it from a defensive standpoint. If you're developing your own code and you want to make sure you have a second set of eyes on it, it can say, hey, these things are bad, right? You need to check these things. On the bad guy side of that, I could take that same piece of code, submit it, and say, show me where the security issues are, and use that to help develop these exploits. So, again, it goes down to that force multiplier of making this typically highly technical work, that much easier. So I think we'll probably see a boom in that. Again, the guardrails and stuff have prevented a lot of, hey, develop an exploit for Windows. You can't just ask it that and have it do that. But again, if you're getting around the guardrails, and there's some of those techniques that can do that, or you're creative in the way you ask, you can get there. We'll start seeing some local use of LLMs and generative AI. There are some local systems that you can download that don't have those guardrails. So as those get better and people get better at deploying them, we'll probably see more of that. So I think the code analysis piece is going to play a big part in the future, and it's something that we're watching pretty closely.
Excellent. Mike, we talked about phishing on a number of our past episodes. of the passwordless POV with you, but we mentioned it earlier in terms of this conversation that, it used to be pretty easy to spot, but now the consistent theme of phishing, the sophistication, really kind of underscores the importance that organizations have to have a really robust education program. So, given that the changes in phishing and the sophistication, what steps can our viewers take to really enable their passwords to be protected against these attempts? And some of that's behavioral.
Absolutely. So, in addition to the use of a password manager, that switched passkeys, that sort of, general awareness and education and understanding these new TTPs. So, like you said, where it's not just about spelling, it's not just about grammar anymore. You've got to dig a little bit deeper. There's a couple of things, sort of general guardrails that I think you can apply here. One is, for most people, just be aware that most companies aren't going to ask you for your password. So if you get that, immediately be suspicious. Be skeptical of any email you weren't expecting, not to be too paranoid, but especially if it's asking for a password. If you think it may be legitimate, call the company and don't call any numbers that are in that actual email. Go to the website, call their number from their legitimate, known website, company.com. Because there is now, within phishing, there's another sort of attack method where they'll send, and I think we talked about this a little bit last time, they'll send an invoice or something like that saying, hey, please call so that you can, to challenge this charge. So you can't even trust the phone numbers in the email. So go to the website, check directly. Check the sender's email and not just the name, check the email itself. So right click on it, hover over it, see what that email is and make sure that it makes sense. You can spoof an email, but it's not as common. So that's another great step to take. For us, we've started publishing alerts on phishing campaigns. So if you get an email from us and you don't think it's legitimate, one, you can always send it to our abuse mailbox, which is just abuse@lastpass.com, and we'll take a look. And that often feeds right into these LastPass Labs blog posts that we're doing now. So when we see these phishing campaigns, we'll let people know about it. Here's the email address it's coming from. Here's the subject line. This isn't us.
And I've actually seen a number of those, and I love that. You can't underscore the importance of an education program and being vigilant and really putting a lot of that on the human side. Alex, take us out. I know we're 23 minutes, and just one more question for Alex as we wrap up our final episode of the year. The future state, take that crystal ball out, the future state of AI and cybersecurity, and with the rise of quantum computing, how can that potentially enhance secure communications?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. And, I will not even pretend to be a quantum computing expert because it is far above my
Same.
skill set. But I will say, the quantum computing, assuming that we have a good technology that allows us to deploy it at scale, is going to be a huge game changer for all kinds of things. I mean, if you talk to people that are cryptography experts, they will tell you that quantum is going to break cryptography as we know it instantly because, how do you encrypt something when you can check every single key, at the same time, right? And that's the kind of, logical jump you have to make with quantum is like, okay, this doesn't operate in a way that, that is in line with the way that we've understood computers and computing in the past. From a communication standpoint and making things secure, it's an arms race again. I kind of go back to this all the time as, as soon as something like that is developed, both the good guys and the bad guys are doing it, are using that technology or approaching that technology in a way to make security either worse if you're an attacker or better if you're a defender. So I think, we'll see the same sort of thing, quantum encryption, again, not a quantum expert. That'll probably happen at some point, we'll see. But yeah, I think the base understanding that you need to have about quantum is it's going to be a game changer in many, many ways. And, it's really hard to predict at this moment.
But I like that you said just the expectation quantum is going to be a game changer. Alex and Mike, it's always a pleasure to have you on the Passwordless POV. Thank you for sharing your intelligence, your insights, your recommendations for the audience. I know I always learn a ton from you guys every time we chat, the blogs that you write that I love to read, the education. We're going to post a link to the LastPass Labs blog here. But thanks, guys. We really appreciate your insights. And we, of course, thank you, the viewers, for watching our episodes this year. We're excited to tell you we're coming back in the new year, January 17th, 2024. Alex and Mike are going to be here. We're going to be taking a look back at 2023 from a cybersecurity learnings perspective. Then they're going to take us into the future of 2024 and share some of the predictions you need to be aware of. You can, of course, find the event on the LastPass LinkedIn page here. Register now so you get it in your calendar. Happy holidays, everyone. We hope you stay well. Thanks for your time.